Good early morning, everybody. You are listening to the live broadcast of Real Steel Sports with your wonderful host, James Krasnerick. Glad to be back, everybody. It's been a little bit since I did a show, but I figured this would be a good time to talk about this topic that's been kind of bothering me. The talk going back and forth about, the hockey, the status of the American USA hockey after seeming almost invincible heading into the semifinal against Canada, and after that point not scoring 2 goals, not scoring not scoring any goals in the final 2 games, going 0 for 58 on our shot attempts, on our shots on goal, and more or less just completely floundering. This team had the potential to win the gold. It did. It had the kind of offense needed. But this Super Bowl this year between the Seahawks and the Broncos kind of showed us, if you get an elite offense and a good defense, and you run up against a buzzsaw of a defense, you're not going to do very well. Again, offense sells tickets. Defense wins championships. Canada snuck into the tournament kind of under the radar, and in the final 2 games, against the USA and against Sweden, they shut both their opponents out and scored 4 goals. That is championship hockey right there. And that's the reason why the Canadians are are wearing gold again at the Olympics. I hope the sound quality sounds better on this one because I modified the sound settings and recording settings on my computer. The previous show that I did about Manziel, Blake Bortles, and Teddy Bridgewater was done on my parents' computer because my computer, I was still trying to calibrate the mic. So I hope that this actually turns out a lot better, and because I'm using Google Chrome this time instead of Firefox. But more or less, I just feel that in this scenario with the U.S., you've got plenty of blame to go around. Was it more or less our opponents, Canada and Finland, just flat out outplaying us? Was it the U.S. coaching just completely and totally floundering, in every situation? Was it the fact that the players emotionally quit because the going was too tough and because, they just weren't shooting well? Or was it simply because of the fact that we were just overwhelmed by the moment? I'm going to throw that out the window immediately because Vancouver 2010 was as big a moment as any. We blitzed the Canadians in the round robin 5-3. I remember that game. We lit up Marty Brodeur. We get to the gold medal match and Crosby beats us in overtime. So the occasion being too big was not the issue. I'm not really sure what the issue was, because there's so many things you could point out. I mean, they often checked one guy at a time deep down in the defensive opposing team zone. See, I try to talk hockey smart, but I'm really not. I'm trying to. You hockey fans out there probably know what I'm talking about, but at the same time probably are laughing at my lack of intelligence. But I did watch both games, and I just wanted to say that, against Canada, against Finland, it was more or less the team not checking good enough, and more or less not being aggressive enough and getting the puck down in the opposing team's goal. That's more or less what I think it was. Because if anything, I thought the game plan, other than that the U.S. coaches had the whole tournament was pretty phenomenal. We had Jonathan Quick at goalie, and he's the best goalie arguably in the NHL. We had a chance to win the gold, and we just didn't. But whenever it comes down to it, I think you got to put a little bit of blame on Bilesman, but not much. And I think it goes under the adage, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Because look at last time the Penguins were in the playoffs against the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cups and the Eastern Conference Finals. They got blitzed 4-0 and scored 2 goals and did not score on the power play. What I'm trying to say is, I think that Bilesma implemented too much of the same system from that playoff run the Penguins had. Because for the couple games against the Islanders and mostly against the Senators, the Penguins were just dominant. And I think that's how you implemented a lot of that game plan. The problem with it is, though, is that I just don't think he thought it out well enough but at the same time, I don't think that the strategy the U.S. played was poor. Because look at what happened. The U.S. used the same strategy against Canada and Finland. Against Canada, it was a great hockey game that they happened to just lose 1-0. Against Finland, they absolutely got blown out 5-0. Here's the point that I'm trying to make here. It's that I think if we have a pie chart here, I'd say a tiny, tiny, tiny slice of blame would go to the Penguins, to go to the coaching staff with Bilesman, Laviolette. But I think that the rest of the pie will go to the players. I think a little bit has to do with the fact that Finland was a good team. They had a good goalie in Tuukka Rask, who made the Penguins look silly in the Stanley Cup, in the Eastern Conference Finals. Why do I keep saying Stanley Cup? The Eastern Conference Finals last year. But at the same time, you had, the U.S. team. Zach Parise is trying to throw Dan Bilesman under the bus. Bilesman had a good system in play, and Parise and the other Penguins, and the other team players in the U.S. roster, they just completely shat all over themselves. That's what they did. Against Canada, it was a great game. They could not have done much more. Canada was just a little bit better. Against Finland, they got down 2-0 and they quit. They went in the tank. Bilesman may have been coaching, but the players sure weren't playing at that point. Giving 2 goals in 11 seconds, that's not the coach's fault. That's the player's fault. And Finland's a good team. They got several really good players. Tuukka Rask, Jukka Jokinen, Olli Maatta. They got a bunch of good players. However, you're not going to be able to sell me for a second that this is all Bilesman's coach. All Bilesman's fault. He coached a game plan that for the first few rounds of the tournament, mainly the round robin in the first match that they played against, I think it was Latvia. Can't remember who they beat in the quarterfinal. It was the Czech Republic. Canada was the team that played Latvia. My apology. But the point is that against Latvia, against the Czech Republic, they absolutely crushed them. Look what the USA did in the round robin as well. Pounded Slovenia, tight game against the Russians, pounded Slovakia. Against the lesser teams, they kick ass. Against 2 of the best teams in the tournament, Finland and Canada, Finland they shat all over themselves, and Canada was just a better team, and it was such a good game. Against Sweden, I think the USA might have pulled that out because of the fact that Sweden absolutely got blitzed by Canada. And I think that the U.S. would have put up a much better fight against Sweden. Let's put it this way. If the U.S. would have beaten Canada, I think they'd have taken the gold. I don't think Sweden would have beat them. But in hindsight, looking back on it now, it's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking with this issue, but I definitely think that this issue is about 85% of the players. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say the game against Canada, the players played their hardest, the coaches had a good game plan, and it was more or less just like a grind-it-out kind of game, where Canada would just happen to get that one goal and have that be the difference. The Finland game, 15% of the blame would fall to the coaches for not even making the slightest adjustments or not reminding the players throughout the game what they're playing for. Because think about it, going back to the States with a big penny is better than going back changeless, okay? That's my opinion. I'd rather go back with the bronze medal than with no medal at all. The silver medal with no medal at all. The gold with no medal at all. It's kind of different when you're talking about team sports in your country versus playing for yourself. Like, if I was playing in the NFL, I'd rather not make the playoffs than lose in the Super Bowl. Absolutely. But when you're playing for your country, to have that medal is kind of like a sense of pride, more or less, I think. It's kind of weird how I think about that, but Bo Bennett just tweeted that for the Pittsburgh Penguins, he'd love to advocate his tax dollars towards the Reds in Pittsburgh. I'm right there with you, Bo Bennett. But anyways, I think the Canada game was just, it was a pick'em. The Finland game, the players did not understand what they were fighting for. They did not understand what they could have accomplished. They didn't understand shit. They went out there, got down 2-0, and just quit. Zach Parise, if I was the NHL team that employed the Minnesota Wild, if you were captain, I would strip you of your captaincy right there. It's piss poor effort. You gave no effort in the game against Finland. You quit. You let your team quit. There's a reason why that Captain Sidney Crosby's got 2 goals and you've got nothing more than a silver. It's because he makes his team realize every single shift what they're playing for. You don't. You're done. And by the way, throwing Dan Bosman under the bus, that was a great idea. That was just a stupid move by you. It really was. Because Bosman did everything he could to get this team ready. You are the captain, have a sense of entitlement to let your team know what you're fighting for. And you're playing for your country and for the stars and stripes. And you go out and put on a shitty-ass effort like that, deport your ass. Seriously. Gutless effort by him. Gutless effort by a lot of the American players. I bet you the Miracle on Ice teammates that are still alive probably shook their head in disgust.